My game of the day from round 3 of the Sinquefield Cup is Magnus Carlsen against Vachier-Lagrave. We joined the game after 18 moves, and well, Carlsen has I think for him, a very typical kind of position. He's got a nice knight on d5 that can't be driven away by a pawn. He's got a nice bishop supporting that knight, and he's got 4 healthy pawns in front of his king. Rock solid position. Vachier-Lagrave's position is a little bit more ragged. You can see that pawn on d7 is isolated. Nevertheless, he's pretty active here, and Carlsen took steps to reduce the activity of black's pieces by playing e3, taking away the d4 square from black's pieces. Somehow a typical Carlsen move, rock solid. Rook b2 from Vachier-Lagrave. Things seem to be fine for black at the moment. So black's piece is pretty active. Carlsen saves the a-pawn, and now knight e7 from Vachier-Lagrave. Of course, if the knights are exchanged, then we'll have a pure opposite coloured bishop position, and that gives black pretty good drawing chances. So Carlsen thought his only hope was to play knight f4. Perhaps he wants to play knight d3, forking rook and bishop, and then exchanging off that knight for the bishop. So Vachier-Lagrave took. I think it's a good move, and that damages Carlsen's pawn slightly on the king side. White's king isn't in any danger, but it sometimes means that it would be difficult to create a passed pawn on the king side. But of course, giving up that dark square bishop does mean that black's king is a little bit exposed, and straight away there's a threat to play queen d4 check, winning the rook on b2. So that's why Vachier-Lagrave played queen b6, and that sets up an attack on f2 with the rook, of course, and this is a major theme in the game. So Vachier-Lagrave is pinning his hopes on that attack on f2, hoping that Carlsen won't be able to break free and activate his rook. Now, Carlsen can take on d7 in this position. He preferred to play a5 first. It amounts to the same thing. Of course, if that's taken, then there's a big queen d4 check. So Vachier-Lagrave played queen c5, and now Carlsen took on d7. So, well, Vachier-Lagrave used the activity of this rook to target the pawn on a5. Things still looking pretty healthy for black at this point. And Carlsen could find nothing better than to withdraw his queen. And here I think Vachier-Lagrave should just take the plunge and take back his pawn. And then, okay, this does free white to a certain extent, either queen d2 or queen e2. And I'm not sure which is better, but you can see that, well, there's no pressure on f2, so that white can now play rook d1, and just for a moment black's rook is rather offside, and that means that black is a little bit vulnerable on the 7th and 8th ranks. Still, this must be the way to go for black. There's a little bit of unpleasantness to put up with, but I think this should be a draw. But Vachier-Lagrave had confidence in his strategy of hitting f2. He wanted to maintain his rook on the 2nd rank. But a6, okay, now Carlsen has been able to hold that pawn, at least for another moment. Vachier-Lagrave played h5, so he wants to secure the position of the knight on f5, doesn't want to allow g4. Bishop b7. So now Carlsen has something to work with. Okay, he's still tied down to the pawn on f2, but he's held his pawn on a6. Now, this is not easy for white to free himself, but let's see what happens. Queen e4, so Carlsen perhaps looking to exchange queens, and that will, of course, take the pressure off f2, and then the rook would be able to free itself. So knight d6. Well, now a queen e5 check would just lead to a draw after the exchange of queens and then knight takes bishop, knight takes bishop, and well, after pawn takes knight, rook b2, and that's a draw straight away. So Carlsen played queen b1, again just holding on to his extra pawn, making sure that everything's fine, so he'll be able to recapture the pawn. And now, well, short of time, I mean, there wasn't a huge time shortage, but you know, a little bit. Vachier-Lagrave starts to play inaccurately. So Carlsen again has gained something here, because his queen is supporting the a pawn and is on this very nice diagonal. And now queen e5. Things have certainly gone Carlsen's way now. The queen activates, and this is looking a little bit iffy. Vachier-Lagrave exchanged, and now the rook is free to roam, and watch out for that pawn on a7. So here we go, rook b1, and now black is in a terrible mess. That pawn is dropping, and with the support of that bishop on g2, in the long run black's position is not good. Here, for instance, if black tries to hang on to that a pawn, then bishop d3 is killing. Of course, the rooks can't be exchanged. Pawn takes will lead to a queen, and if king f8, well, white can transpose directly into king pawn. King g2 is good here. In fact, this king and pawn ending is quite easy for white as well. Vachier-Lagrave played instead h4, but okay, this is hit and hope really. Once the a pawn drops, it's gone. Okay, it's just a little bit problematic with that pawn on h3, but Carlsen has it absolutely under control. First of all, he takes the d4 square away by playing rook here. Now the bishop holds the a pawn, there's no danger. So let's kick that knight, and that means that now the rook can come back and take the h pawn. You can see if rook takes pawn, excuse me, if rook takes pawn, mouse slip there. If rook takes pawn, then rook d8 check is of course winning, followed by bishop takes rook. Knight g2 played, okay, takes the h pawn, and now the rook came here. Okay, you could play rook b3 straight away. He forced g5, it's not absolutely necessary, but it doesn't make any difference. And now rook b3, and here Vachier-Lagrave resigned. Perhaps a little bit early, but with two extra pawns, this is pretty simple for white. Carlsen is going to free himself on the king side very easily with f3 and then king f2, and well, the bishop will probably come to c4, and that king has a direct line all the way to b6 to escort the a pawn home. So in the end, a pretty smooth victory for Carlsen, but this was a case of, seems to me, where the old magic was back with Magnus. Somehow he persuaded Vachier-Lagrave to play some couple of pretty bad moves, I think, or persuaded Vachier-Lagrave to defend in a certain way, which perhaps wasn't the best. It's incredible the effect that Magnus has on some players sometimes, and in the end it was pretty smooth for Magnus. Veselin Topalov remains in the clear leader after 3 rounds. Actually, he drew quite a solid game against Vichy Anand. Topalov had black, Anand played very solidly, so Topalov has 2.5 out of 3, but that draw means that the players have bunched up, and Carlsen, among others, has 2 out of 3. Wesley So won a very nice game today against Grushuk. Anyway, I'm sure you can find that elsewhere on chessbase.com, for example. You can read all the news there. Thanks for watching.